Welcome back. You're still watching The Globe. The National Consumer Commission and the KwaZulu-Natal government have launched a provincial consumer tribunal to help quickly resolve consumer disputes. The province has the fourth highest number of consumer complaints received by the Commission. The launch of the tribunal coincided with World Consumer Rights Day.
A total of 3,000 consumer complaints from KwaZulu-Natal are before the National Consumer Commission. The disputes mainly emerge from the industries of motor vehicles, clothing and telecommunications. The NCC also revealed that KZN is the hub of pyramid schemes. These schemes usually promise big returns on bogus investment plans. The newly launched KZN Consumer Tribunal will work with the judiciary and other law enforcement agencies to bring redress and promote consumer rights. The KZN Tribunal is made up of 4 practicing legal practitioners. Its work will mostly involve mediation in resolving disputes. KZN is the 4th province to have its own consumer tribunal after Free States, Mpumalanga and Gauteng.
We don't expect people to behave in an adversarial manner as it happens in court, then where you need a very bright lawyer because it is on technicalities. Here we want to go to the nub, to the core of the problem and resolve it. So it's not a question of the one who can talk the most to win, but it is the one who has got the facts.
Government says the tribunal will provide consumers with an equal access to justice.
In cases, there's still a significant number which talks to the need that is out there. Look, what protection has government provided? I think it starts off with our constitution, the constitutional rights and values. Then in KZN we have our own Consumer Protection Act, which is passed in 2013, but that dovetails with the national legislation, but provides a specific legal framework for us in KZN to appoint our own tribunal.
The theme for the 2022 World Consumerized Day is sustainable consumption. The occasion was marked with an inspection of imported goods targeting South African consumers at a freight station in Durban. Only 4% of imported goods are inspected for compliance when they enter the country.
But besides that, while we are having only the 4% that we detain, it happens that 96% of some of the consignments that live here, they end up in some of your inner city and all that, wherein they are non-compliant. So the responsibility of the province as well is to follow up. That's what we did now when we were in central Durban, to make sure that when we find those goods and also the stores as well, we confiscate them and make sure that they destroy them.
The Commission says goods that fail to meet the compliance criteria are shipped back to their country of origin. Bongani Gema, SABC News, Durban.
Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Mr Joseph Selolo, who's with the National Consumer Commission. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Evening to you and evening to the viewers, Peter.
All right, so today's World Consumer Day. What comes to mind for you as the National Consumer Commission on a day like this? It's a global one, but what's the South African perspective?
The Consumer Rights Day is a very important day in the calendar of consumer protection. It is a day where we celebrate consumer rights and the protection thereof, including the education to consumers of their rights. And we are really proud of the KZN province for having launched a consumer court that will then deal with the infractions of consumer rights.
Yeah, do you think that this has been long overdue? KwaZulu-Natal is not a small province.
Indeed, it's not a small province, and you are correct, it is long overdue. The consumers in this province have for a very long time been without a cause and without a court, and by extension, therefore, been without proper redress. They would have had to lodge complaints with the National Consumer Commission, which is miles and miles of kilometers away from where they are. Now they can have their disputes resolved right at their doorsteps.
Before we talk about the kinds of things that consumers are troubled with, I'm often curious about systemic issues. What do you think are the issues in terms of systems, the processes that generate all of these complaints that really need to be addressed?
Look, consumer complaints follow consumer spending. Now, we all know that the most expensive thing that you can buy is a house. It is followed by a motor vehicle, followed by furniture, followed by appliances, right? And then followed by your small electronics like your cell phone, but not so small in terms of price. Now, the biggest problem we have experienced or have seen is that even though the law says there is a statutory warranty of 6 months to the effect that consumers are entitled to good quality and safe products that are usable and durable for at least 6 months. We have seen situations where consumers purchase goods and they experience problems with those goods within the 6 months that is prescribed by law, and suppliers simply refuse to refund, replace, or repair. And that has been the source of the most complaints. The leading complaints being motor vehicles.
So why are the suppliers not conforming to the law? Is it because they, most of the time, can get away with it?
That is possibly one of the reasons, but it appears that some suppliers see compliance with the law as a burden to business, when in fact the burden is more, non-compliance is more expensive. But it is our firm belief that the absence of a court in the province does allow suppliers to get away with some of these wrongdoings.
Do you think that there could be an education issue that maybe just as you educate consumers, that suppliers need to be educated and that they may not really understand their obligations?
Yeah, we need to remember that we are dealing with the Consumer Protection Act, whose main focus is the protection of consumers. However, that does not mean that suppliers are neglected. We do have education programs that are tailor-made for suppliers, but those must also be combined with enforcement where there is redress to consumers, coupled with punishment for the non-compliant suppliers. But in a nutshell, there are education programs for suppliers.
So now with big ticket items, there are agreements that you can actually read, take home if you want to, and study, and you know what you're getting. But with smaller purchases over the counter, you're not getting anything, a receipt if you're lucky. How are consumers protected in that environment? Because if you don't quite know what your rights are, you have no idea where to start getting recourse.
And that's why such a day such as this is very important. However, the education to consumers is not limited to today only. And that's why the platform such as yours is very important, where we get to educate consumers about their rights. The most important thing is to educate consumers of their rights, because the first line of defense is the consumer themselves. You need to know your rights. You need to know that you have a right to fair value goods that are safe and are of good quality. you need to know that you have a right to return the goods should they not meet the standard of being safe and of being usable and durable for a reasonable period of time. Now, once you know those rights, then you can insist on your rights. Consumer education is an ongoing process, and it is carried out by the National Consumer Commission and the various consumer protection agencies in the various provinces. That one is an ongoing process. We will always, every year, there are programs that are put in place to make sure that consumers are educated. And this is the culmination of those where we just simply celebrate the rights that consumers have. But it is important that they are all educated so that they can exercise their rights.
So one of the things that often happens is you walk into a shop and there are big signs that say, you can't return, you can't do this, you can't do that. Does that take away their obligations, putting up signs?
No. There is a term in our law, pro non scripto, that simply means it's as if it was never written. So you cannot contract out of legislation, number one. You cannot contract out of rights that were given by legislation, right? So a supplier, by simply putting that sign, that's fine. However, when a consumer then comes to try to return or to seek a refund and you refuse, you have then broken the law, irrespective of the fact that you may have put up such a sign. Such a sign is as good as not being there.
All right, so we do have certain, what are the most important rights that you'd like to share with our viewers? The most important and most, perhaps the basic rights that we have as consumers with all transactions?
Most importantly is that consumers have a right to receive goods that are safe and are of good quality. This is good because goods that are not safe threaten life and limb. Now, there won't be any consumer to talk about should goods take people's lives. You have seen in the past where we were doing even recalls of unsafe goods. So that's the most fundamental right. Then there's the right to information. So goods that you purchase must be properly labeled so that you can then understand what you are transacting about and you are able to make an informed choice.
All right. That's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much indeed to Mr. Selolo for joining us on the program. I think that we should do these more often, actually, and look at specific issues to continue this education process. But thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I look forward to another chat quite soon.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to the listeners. We are always available.
Thank you so much. All right, so know your rights. If you're a consumer, you have loads of rights. Now, we are going to